Hello and welcome to Straight Talk, Supply Chain Insights, the podcast for your supply chain leader who is on the go and wants to be in the know. And now, your host, Lora Cecere.
Welcome to Straight Talk with Supply Chain Insights. My name is Lora Cecere. I'm the founder of Supply Chain Insights, and the purpose of this podcast is to help the supply chain leader that's on the go but wants to be in the know. Today, I am fortunate to be able to interview Doug Bordonaro. Doug is with Thoughtspot. Doug, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Laura. It's good to be here.
Tell the group a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Thoughtspot. You know, I don't find that many people know about you. You're innovative new technology, I think, is pretty exciting, but I don't find that a lot of supply chain leaders know about Thoughtspot. So tell the group a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Thoughtspot.
Sure, yeah. So I've been in data and analytics for, 20 plus years. I used to manage the online data warehouse and BI platform for Disney. Before that, I helped manage data at America Online. And I've been with Thoughtspot since about 2013. I think one of the reasons that a lot of your listeners may not have heard of Thoughtspot is because we're a relatively new company. We were founded in 2012, and really with the idea of connecting just non-technical business users like supply chain professionals directly to the data they need to make decisions so that they don't always have to go through analysts to get answers. It turns out that really hit a nerve in the market. This is solving apparently a problem for a lot of people. And we've grown incredibly rapidly just over the past few years. So I think if your listeners haven't heard of us, they probably will soon. Just as an example, Gartner just put us into the leaders quadrant of the BI and Analytics Magic Quadrant. And there are only 4 vendors there, and we're by far the smallest, really because our approach is an entirely different way to give people access to the information they need without requiring that an analyst build a report or a dashboard every time they have a question.
Well, and I think that is so important because as a business user, I never got it right when I was supposed to give requirements for a report. You just can't anticipate what you need, and self-service is so important. I have clients that take, 4 days to get reports and to see their data. So let's talk about enterprise search and what it means and what Thoughtspot does. How do you help business users to get to insights they need?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's important to differentiate enterprise search from the type of search we do. Ultimately, enterprise search is a space where it's really focused on letting people find the location of things within their network or within their enterprise. So think of Google, but behind your company firewall. What we're really doing is we're doing analytics. So we're solving the same problem any other reporting or BI tool is. How do we give people the answers they need when they need it? But we're doing that via the interface that everybody already knows. And if you think about it, we all go home at 5 or 6 p.m. And we access data all the time, whether it's LinkedIn to network with professionals, or we access hundreds of terabytes of retail data going to Amazon.com. But nobody, even though we all shop at Amazon, nobody's ever called Amazon and said, all right, when's your next training class? Or there's no 800 number to get help. People just know how to interact with data that way. And that's really what we're doing at work for the enterprise. But instead of giving you a search bar that tells you where your last performance review is, we'll give you a search bar that lets you get something like your average inventory carry by region for the last 30 days. It's really about putting analytics and the power of analytics in the hands of end users, and including and especially supply chain professionals, so that they can make the decision when the decision has to be made. And we found, again, that it resonates with companies really in every industry, whether you're a massive retailer with a huge online and offline presence, or you're a world-class financial organization that is really just trying to make sure that everything's where it needs to be for people.
And what does it take to use Thoughtspot? My clients have over 110 different systems. I've got some companies that have 39 ERP systems. The average company has 10. The average company has 4 to 5 analytics tools. So the listener may be sitting out there going, yeah, but I got all this other stuff. What do I need this for? And what do I need to do to use it? Can you explain?
Sure, and I think it's important to understand first that not all data is created equal. So if you're looking at data that's in an ERP system, if you're looking at data that's in a CRM system or in a pricing system, it's not that data usually is not ready for analytics. It's just not physically stored in a format that's going to do that. So what traditionally has happened to unlock the value in that data is that organizations will go through a process of sourcing the data from those systems and bringing it together into an analytic format, into a data warehouse, into a data mart, into a place that's ready for analytics. But even after spending millions of dollars to do that with world-class technologies, end users are no closer to using the data than they were before the project started. They still have to fill out a requirements form and send it to an analyst and then wait a week to be able to get an answer, which might meet 80% of their requirements and might be too late to be useful. We're really solving that last mile problem. For organizations that have invested in making their data more ready for analytics, what we're doing is connecting those end users to the data so that they can do the analytics and avoid the entire trap of requirements. Because ultimately the problem with requirements is requirements are really intended to bridge the gap between the business user, the supply chain professional who understands their business and what they're trying to accomplish, and the analyst who has to give them the answer, who may not understand the business problem very well, but knows the language of data and how it's stored and how to get answers out of it. But when two people are speaking a different language and just communicating via a requirements document, it really often resembles either the game of telephone, where two people down the line, it doesn't even resemble the initial remarks. Or it just takes so long that, in this age of digital transformation and, hourly pricing changes with a lot of competitors, it's impossible to keep up that way.
So are you saying, Doug, that Thoughtspot helps you to get over that schema issue that most people have with applications, or that after you do the extract, it helps with being able to drive the insights? I'm just not real clear. Can you explain?
Yeah, I would say that people typically are able to get insights from data we see in three different ways, and only one of those ways is really served by traditional analytics, and that way is really by explicit questions. So if I have a question and I ask a question, how does my pricing change from my competitors' pricing over the last 90 minutes, let's say, right? And that's that may be a question that is impossible to answer in many systems, but it's very relevant today in the world of hourly pricing changes in Amazon, for example. We can answer that very quickly, not only because of the speed of the system, but because it doesn't require an analyst to ask the question. We're able to take a lot of technologies that just didn't exist 10 years ago, like machine learning and artificial intelligence and massively parallel computing and a lot of other technical things I won't go into, to really bridge the gap between that language barrier, where you don't have to learn the language of data, because we can start to bridge that gap with technology. But there are two other ways that we help derive insights that traditional analytics just doesn't do. And the first one is really peer-to-peer learning. When I talk about peer-to-peer learning, I don't mean sharing best practices or sharing reports. I really mean, in some ways, the same thing as the way Google works, where, what really happens when you use Google is you don't type your question in and then hit go. Most of the time, you type half of your question, Google reads your mind, and then you just say, oh yeah, that's what I wanted, and you go there. And Google can do that because not only does it know what you've asked before and where you are geographically and all sorts of other things, it knows what other people who are near you have asked, or other people who have behaved like you. And so this ability for machines to augment learning across and between users so that they can actually learn from each other's behavior without ever meeting each other really helps drive not only adoption, but insights and time to value. And then the third leg that we're able to do is really leveraging the power of AI and machine learning. Our product automatically, without requiring data scientists, builds models of user behavior. It looks at patterns in data and the different distributions of data. It understands these schemas you're talking about, how data is stored in tables, and derives insights that we can present to end users, so that instead of you having to say, well, tell me all of the places in my supply chain where we are about to go out of stock and may have an issue, Thoughtspot can just surface those insights and say, well, here's your answer, but did you know that you actually have 4 times as much inventory as you've ever historically needed in this one location, and you might want to take a look at why that is. So what we found is that surfacing in milliseconds the insights that people might never have thought to ask for is often far more valuable than just answering the question they did think of.
Yeah, the questions we're not smart enough to ask, right? Discovery. But, the other question that I get, Doug, and, just bear with me, when I talk to supply chain leaders, they'll say, well, I've got descriptive analytics. I've got Tableau or ClickView or Spotfire. Why would I need something like Thoughtspot? What would you tell people then?
Yeah, I think that is, I think that's a very end product focused perspective. I think Thoughtspot is often less about the end result. It's more about who can get that result and when they can get it. So, if you look at all the analytic tools in the marketplace, and there are hundreds, right? There are hundreds of products that can give you the right answer. I hope they can all give you the right answer. There'd be no reason for them to be in business otherwise. The problem isn't that you can't get that answer. It's what it takes to get there. If it takes a week to ask an analyst, not only is that week lost opportunity, in most cases what we've found is that people just don't ask the question. Instead they say, well, I don't want to wait to get the answer, or it's not going to be useful if I wait that long, so I won't even ask it. But if you compare that to the behavior of a consumer search engine, think about in your personal life how much of your time is sucked up on the internet, just going down rabbit holes and saying, oh, what's this next thing, and what's this next question, and that leads another question. And this is just in our casual time where we're exploring the world around us by just continually questioning things. That's so easy to do with search in our personal lives. We can't do that today at work at all. Every time we have a question that isn't pre-answered in a report or a dashboard, we have to go to an expert. So I think it's really important for us all to change our mindset from, do I have a way of getting the right answer, to, can I get the answer with no barrier anytime I have a question? And even more importantly, can the data tell me the questions I should be asking as opposed to just depending upon asking that question? And what we find is with the incredible growth in the volume of data in the world, the data, particularly, that supply chain professionals have access to. I mean, every loading dock, every truck, every hand jack today produces a stream of data that it can be useful for something. It's not enough just to ask questions of that data, particularly when you have to go to an expert to do it. We really need to start moving to a paradigm where the data is telling us what's important, so that we can stop just measuring the business the same way we have for the past 30 years and start really taking advantage of what's going to enable us, frankly, to stay in business for the next 30 years.
Well, Doug, we're going to have a dinner with about 40 supply chain leaders in a couple of weeks, where we're going to be talking about the potential of Thoughtspot and the supply chain and going through some business cases. What are the pieces that you'd like for us to really expound on with those leaders? It sounds like insights at the speed of business and the ability to answer the questions that you don't know to ask, and the time for deployment. Are there other pieces that you think we should really focus on there? My mind works in analogies. I like to think in terms of things that we're all familiar with, because it helps illustrate points to me. And when I'm sitting down to a dinner with people, one of the reasons I do it is the conversation and the networking, and you don't know where it's going to go, right? You sit down across from somebody you haven't met before who's in a similar industry, and you start to have this dialogue, and it leads you to a place that you would never have foreseen at the beginning of the dinner. Frankly, if you could foresee where it went, why would you even go, right? The value in that is learning things you didn't know before. And unfortunately, we treat our relationship with data today very much that at all. It's very much like more of a, let's just fill out a bunch of questions and mail them in and wait to get answers. What we're really trying to do, the best way to think about Thoughtspot in this context, is we're trying to make this relationship with data act the same way that your networking dinner is going to act. We want people to be able to sit down with the data, people who are totally untechnical, who are focused on solving supply chain problems and not learning how data is stored, and let them have an ongoing, interesting dialogue with data
so that at the end of 5 minutes, at the end of 10 minutes, at the end of 20 minutes, that they not only have the answers to any question they thought of in that whole time, but a lot of insights that they would never have thought of if technology weren't able to have the data present unexpected insights to people. So that's really what we're doing. It's what people already know from other domains in their life. We're really just bringing that to data to really unlock the value from all of the investment people have made in bringing data into the ecosystem to begin with.
Well, and I look forward to that, and that's a great analogy. I can imagine how this tool could be used in sales and operations planning meetings or customer segmentation discussions as really an assist to the dialogue and helping people to answer the questions they don't know to ask or to getting insights. So many companies are so rich in data and so poor in insights that I can't wait to hear what our discussion's like at that dinner. Well, let's wrap up, Doug. Anything I didn't ask you that you want to tell the audience?
Well, I would just say that even though people may not have heard of Thoughtspot, this approach is not new to a lot of companies you have heard of. It turns out that the companies that can unlock the most value from large amounts of data and have the most analysts just having to publish reports to people are exactly the same companies that we've all heard of every day, just huge retailers and huge manufacturers that have significant supply chain issues traditionally. And what we've been able to do by working with these companies is really radically change their relationship with data just in a matter of weeks, not even months. For example, I was working recently with a major international retailer, one of the largest in the world that has a significant online and offline presence. And what they used to do is every day or two they'd get a report from their reporting analysts, the merchandisers would, telling them what their out of stock was and what their pricing levels were versus the competition. And of course, in the day of Amazon, that information is already outdated by the time they get it. And what they were able to do really in a very short period of time is change their organization to one where these totally non-technical, very young merchandisers who are pretty fresh out of school are able to ask pretty much any question and find out why all of a sudden we're out of stock of umbrellas in South Dakota when nobody expected that and a report would have taken days. They can query the data, find the answer almost immediately, and make instant changes. And what that really allows them to do is compete far more effectively with companies like Amazon that started as digital companies. So I would certainly encourage anybody who is interested in this type of approach to talk to some of the folks who've already done it, because this is something a lot of people are moving toward, and that's one of the major reasons that Thoughtspot's grown so rapidly in the past few years.
And Doug, how many companies have deployed Thoughtspot?
I don't have the number off the top of my head, but hundreds. I would say most of our customers are very large enterprise businesses. Not all of them, but most of them are large enterprises. And we've deployed at a good somewhere around I want to say off the top of my head 400 or 500 different companies right now, and almost all of those have expanded dramatically since the initial purchase too. So they can see value from Thoughtspot, and they've doubled down or tripled or quadrupled down on their initial investment because they want to spread it across their entire enterprise.
An average company, how many users would be actually using Thoughtspot on your average deployment?
Yeah, that's a good question. We decided very early on to not only innovate in terms of technology, but also to innovate in terms of pricing. So we don't price by user. I think it's very important that everybody who needs access to analytics in an organization has access to analytics. So we actually don't price by seat, and putting one more person on Thoughtspot is no incremental charge. So we have some organizations that have a very focused use case with tens or 20 up to 100 users. But in most of our organizations, we would see, or most of our customers, we would see a large percentage of penetration within the groups where we've been deployed. So the example I was just talking about a few minutes ago, I think they have 10 or 20,000 users potentially on Thoughtspot at this point, and it really tends to turn viral, right? So what we see is it grows very rapidly as people see what the person next to them is doing and says, "Can I get access?" and realizes there's no licensing implication to say yes.
Well, I like your licensing model. Thank you so much for being on the show today, and I appreciate sharing the insights in a new form of analytics for the audience. We will be writing up the summary of the discussion we're going to have with supply chain leaders, and I look forward to sharing with you that as well. Until next time, thank you for joining the show.